Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Last Symptom live stream. Going to give some people time to come in. The way this works is that the first half bit is open to everybody, and then the second half is exclusively for supporters on locals. And so we would like to encourage you to join our online community there on locals. It's a nice community. We talk about emotional health. We put things in perspective. We talk about authentic recovery from emotional disorders. Emotional disorders are things that usually get classified as other things, like people might refer to them as personality disorders. Well, I'm drawing a blank, but a lot of the disorders that people are out there talking about, what it really comes down to, they're just emotional disorders. And since they're all emotional disorders, the underlying problem is the same, which means that the solution is the same. Hello there, Laura. Good to see you here today. Hello, Carrie. What a pleasure. How you guys doing? Let's start that way. Let's find out how you're doing and start that way. We had yesterday we had our Zoom get together, our Last Symptom Zoom get together. Hello, Julie. Julie was there, and we spent 5 hours together on Zoom. It was about 5 hours, getting a visit and stuff like that. So if you missed that, keep an eye open for the next opportunity. I'll make an announcement on our locals group. If you want to join us on locals, it's thelastsymptom.locals.com, or you can download the locals.com app from the App Store and then just search for The Last Symptom by Brian Barnett within. And then, so this is something, this Zoom get together, it's a free thing that I do, and it just gives us all an opportunity to get to know each other. I do it. I used to do it a few times a year. As my workload has increased over the years, it's been more difficult for me to set aside time to do that. But join us on locals and keep an eye open, and we'll try to do that still at least a few times a year. Laura says it's been a difficult week on her end, full of doubt, self-doubt, mental exhaustion. Carrie couldn't be at the Zoom get together. She had a prior commitment. Well, that's understandable. Ivan on YouTube's got a question. Do you plan on doing more streams or informative videos on YouTube, or just on locals? Penny's here. Hi, Penny. Laura says she'd love to have a Zoom with the community. To answer your question, Ivan, as you know, I'm a one-man show, and I try to get plenty of stuff on all the platforms. Of course, my preference is to get everybody to join us over on locals. That's where it's all happening. But I'm trying to accommodate what people are used to and what they like. So orange slices are something that they'll keep appearing on YouTube and Rumble and locals. Of course, the first start of these live streams is streaming out to YouTube, as you know. One thing I've started doing is I've started including the orange slices on the podcast, on the Last Symptom podcast. So if you're subscribed to the audio only podcast, like you listen on Spotify or whatever, then you can start hearing the orange slices in just their audio form. So we're going to see how that works. My method is just to try things, and if it don't work, then I can do away with it. But as long as it works, then I like to do it. Does that answer your question, Ivan? I'm planning to continue. Well, I'll tell you, Ivan, the reason that locals is so nice is because it's our community, and it's not just my participation; it's the community participating, and it's a nice thing. But somebody asked me yesterday on our Zoom get together if I intended to discontinue the podcast. No, I don't intend to discontinue the podcast. You just have to remember that everything that I do takes up my time. And then during the week, I also have one-on-one phone conversations with people and Zoom conversations with people that make appointments with me. So that takes up a lot of my time too. I'm trying to do as much as I can. And I'm not just trying to do as much as I can, but I'm also trying to be sensitive to what works. So when people respond good to a thing, I like to give more of that. Joy is here today. She says, I'm glad to catch y'all today. It's been a while. Just got back from nearly a week in Tennessee with visiting my brother. How's the weather in Tennessee there, Joy? Was it about 100 degrees? Ivan, a lot of the people I'm talking to right now are watching the live stream on locals. The vast majority. Joy says it was humid in Tennessee. Yeah, I can imagine. I share their weather. That's why I know. I hope you had a good time. I love Tennessee. Did you come home with any Tennessee with? By the way, did you fly there or did you drive? Joy's from out there out west. So Tennessee is just not right around the corner for her. I'll tell you one thing that I was hoping to talk about today. Let me pull it up. I had made a post on our locals group last week about who's ever going to love me. And so I'll read that to you. It's all about love. And primarily it's about how being able to love in a genuine way is more fulfilling, it turns out, in my experience, than being loved in return. And yesterday, one of the folks who had attended our free Zoom get together, sorry, can't breathe, had said, why don't you go over that? Why don't you explain that a little bit more? So I'm going to try to do that today. We'll get to that probably in the second half. Who's ever going to love me? And love and the nature of all that. How the things that I shared in that post are all connected and depend on each element depends on the other element. But to ease into things, we got a good turnout here today. Joy flew to Tennessee. Kayaking. You got to do kayaking. It's funny. Just this morning, I was looking at kayaks. We were talking yesterday in that Zoom get together about kayaking, and I've never owned my own kayak. So I started thinking, well, and REI is running a sale right now. REI, the outfitter store, is running a big sale right now. Or was it? Oh, it was LL Bean. LL Bean's running a big sale, and they've got a bunch of kayaks for sale. I think I need the sale price to come down even a little bit more before I invest in a kayak. But what I'd like to do is some outdoor adventure type thing, a multi-day and night, maybe a week-long thing involving kayaks and rivers and creeks, and just find a place on the map and just map out a course over the course of like 4 or 5 days and nights. I think that would be really cool. Joy did some touristy stuff in Nashville, did drink some whiskey with her brother on the porch watching lightning bugs. You call them fireflies out there? We call them lightning bugs. What do the rest of you call lightning bugs? Do you call them lightning bugs or do you call them fireflies? Where you're from? course, I know what fireflies are. In fact, I've been working on a song, writing a song here for a while called, what was the title that I gave it? Field of Fireflies. Field of Fireflies. It's based on a memory that I have with my ex-wife Diana, where we were walking around our neighborhood and we stopped along the silhouette of dark trees, and the lightning bugs were just, it was incredible. It was like this amazing light show. They were all going off together at the same time. And so I wanted to memorialize that moment with her in a song. And so I've been working on this song called Field of Fireflies, which just sounds better to me than Field of Lightning Bugs. So well, I would call them lightning bugs, but for the title of the song, I choose to go with fireflies. Penny, you say fireflies down there? Carrie uses both terms. Joy doesn't even have them in California. She's amazed by them. I guess for you, Joy, it's kind of like somebody from Hawaii coming over and seeing snow for the first time or something. Laura says they're in France. Ivan says in Croatia we call those Flintstone bugs. Really? Do you know, is there an explanation for why you call them Flintstone bugs? I guess because it's like striking flint. We had somebody, by the way, yesterday with us in that Zoom get-together from Macedonia. That was pretty cool. Everybody else was from the States, but we had one person from Macedonia. She was a nice addition to our group yesterday. There's a pattern to lightning bugs. They come about this time of the summer when they're really active and they're doing like all their mating and everything, and you'll see them heavy for a few weeks. Then they start to die down. So it's really only at the beginning of summer that they're really super active, and then after that you might see a stray one here and there, but not like this period of time right now during the summer. Did you know that? Did you guys know that? Were you aware of that pattern? I like patterns. Even with the work we do here with emotional health and recovery, patterns are so handy, because if you can recognize a pattern, for example, in yourself, then that makes you powerful. Ivan says he doesn't have any idea. They also call them dragonflies as fairy horse. Oh, dragonflies they call fairy horses. So it's just my language, I guess. Well, that's really interesting. I can see why dragonflies would be called fairy horses. Now, of course, after this live stream, I'm going to have to get off here and do a bunch of research on Croatia. And beef up my knowledge about your culture. Ivan's a great guy. He's been following The Last Symptom on YouTube for a while and comments regularly on YouTube, and I really enjoy having you around, Ivan. The full experience, of course, is on Locals, but there's a reason why I stream to YouTube and Rumble, because I want to give something to everybody wherever they prefer to watch and listen and those sorts of things. So I trying to do what I can. Like a dark spot right there. It's just hair. So this is an opportunity for you folks to ask me any questions you might have of me. Ivan asked a good one earlier. Ivan T. Spitfire says that she loves Croatia. She travels a lot. What do you what stands out to you, Penny, about Croatia? Laura says patterns are great when used to gain awareness. However, when used by somebody else to remind one of patterns we're trying to break, it becomes about mental strength to continue focusing on the goal to reach. Well, I appreciate you saying that, Laura. That's an interesting perspective. Well, do you understand what I mean by them making you powerful? Uh, for example, I've talked to some people that every time at a certain time of year, they've recognized a pattern that they become depressed or melancholy at a certain time of year. So, do you see how that makes you powerful if in the lead up to those months, you know that's going to occur? You're used to that occurring and you know that's going to occur. It gives you options to mitigate the effect of that pattern that you go through. One pattern, for example, that I've talked about in the past is like I picked up on this pattern with myself where anytime I would have an encounter with my dad, um, I would, for maybe a week after that, I realized that even if I didn't think I was still thinking about my dad, apparently subconsciously my mind was still bouncing over thoughts of my dad in my head because I would get really impatient and moody and things like that. So the way that that made me powerful was that anytime that occurs now, I just know the effect that it's going to have on me, and then I can make decisions to mitigate that effect. So, for example, maybe I won't make any big decisions during that week. Um, I'll preemptively apologize to people. Like I'll go to people I'm spending a lot of time around. I'll say, I just want to let you know that I'm dealing with something. I'm dealing with some emotional family related things in my head. And so if I get snappy or whatever, or impatient with you, I just want to let you know ahead of time, it's probably not your fault. So that's the way I've learned to handle that. Ivan says that patterns help him to see when he's got a certain negative reaction and how he can avoid the situation that gives me that negative reaction. Yeah, so that's kind of what I just described in my own personal experience, in my own personal life. All right, so let me offer the opportunity again. Does anybody have any questions for me? Can be any questions at all. Might be about my plans with last symptom or what I'm working on, or it can be about emotional health. It can be about some obstacle in your recovery. Anything, anything that's on your mind, and I'll do my best to answer it. Carrie says that the older she gets, the more she notices patterns and can see how that could be helpful. Yeah, um, it's funny how we fell into this conversation just talking about lightning bugs, right? I'm always looking for patterns in everything because a pattern is a shortcut. It's not like how do I handle this situation brand new from scratch every time you find yourself in that situation. If you can recognize the pattern, come up with a way to handle it, then you've already got that in your toolbox anytime that pattern occurs. Uh, Somebody was just talking to me. They were going to go on a big trip. A family was going to go on a big trip. And the one family member was talking to me about another family member and said, I always recognize this pattern. In the beginning, there's all this stress and anxiety. And then the trip happens. And then there's this period where the person does fine, but then it's like the stress and anxiety seem to catch up to the person and the person even begins to experience bitterness that they even have to be on this trip, which then results in an explosion. And I said, man, it's really good that you recognize the pattern of that, because that happens to me too. And so knowing the pattern gives me options for how to prevent that cycle from even happening. Ivan's got a question. Ivan says, I have borderline personality disorder, and I often use heavy daydreaming to escape when times get hard. How does one break that cycle of daydreaming? Wanted to ask you for this for a long time. Can you tell me, Ivan, do you realize that you're in the daydream? There's another term for this. It's not coming to me though. What you're calling daydreaming, there's another term for it. Maybe you folks who are here can help me remember what that term is. It's got to do with, like, for example, when you're a kid and your parent is screaming at you. He's like breaking you down, tearing you down, and your brain goes somewhere else. So you're there being abused, but your mind is somewhere else. Do you remember what the name for that is? Zone out? Um, Not that. There's another term for it. I did a show on it. I realize, Ivan says, but it feels really good for that time. Give me a second. Bear with me. I'm going to pull up the podcast and see if I can find that episode where I talk about exactly this. Oops. Shows, The Last Symptom, episodes. Bear with me. Disassociate. Joy's got it. Yeah. It's about the term that they use, Ivan, for that in the context you're talking about is dissociation. Thank you, Joy. You rescued me. And I did do an episode about dissociation. It's something that used to happen to me when I was a little boy. My father would corner me, and he would be having a trip. What I'm talking about is, like, he would be going through this self-loathing type thing. Of course, unconsciously, he doesn't know that that's what's bothering him. But he would take it out on me, and sometimes it would go into like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I'd have to go to bed and get up like 2 hours later to go to school. But while I was being verbally abused and physically abused too, sleep deprivation and that sort of thing is physical abuse too, I would dissociate. So my mind would go somewhere else, and I could hear him talking to me, and I could see him and do all that, but I wasn't really there. It's a protection when you're a child because you're helpless. It's not a positive thing when you're an adult, though. Now, this is different than just having an active imagination. Having a really active imagination is a great thing. The reason why it's not a good thing as an adult is because emotional disorder is rooted heavily in running from things, not taking responsibility and running from things. So you're in a different situation now as an adult than you were as a child. When you were a child, your parents were responsible for you. And so when the people responsible for you are your abusers, this dissociation is a safeguard for you. It keeps you sane. It protects you. But when you become an adult, it's now you who are responsible for you. And so running from things that you're responsible for is not a healthy way to handle life. So a lot of authentic recovery involves turning around and facing things that we've been used to running from forever. Now, your question is, how do you break yourself out of that, right? Got a lot of comments coming in, so let me try to catch up. The reason why I asked you, Ivan, is if you recognize that you're doing it, is because that's the biggest obstacle for anything, is awareness and recognizing that you're doing something. I use this trick all the time. It's not really a trick. It's just something the more you do it, you can get good at. So, for example, when I recognize that my emotions begin to rise, I don't have to wait until they're already up here before I make decisions. If I can recognize that they're beginning to rise, at that point, I'm powerful. I am still in control. I can still make decisions and get myself away from there or change the subject or any number of things. So when this dissociation starts, or this daydreaming, as you call it, you need to be aware, or you need to practice recognizing when that begins. Then you need to begin, you need to get good at recognizing why it begins. And then you got to get good at remembering that the last symptom says, this is me trying to run from something that I'm responsible for. So instead of running from it, I'm going to instead turn around and face it head on like a responsible adult. Now let me catch up to everybody else. Joy says that she'd been thinking about that transition time of having young adult children living at home and healthy navigating of being under the same roof in a healthy way. If you have thoughts or wisdom on that, I'd love to hear it. Well, my wisdom on that, my perspective on it, is that until a child is 18, I don't care if they like my decisions or not, because I'm still the one making them. Now, having said that, what I mean is that I'm not going to give that control, that authority, that responsibility to somebody who's not yet ready for it. So that's what I mean by I don't care. Having said that, I can be intent on not giving that responsibility and that authority and stuff over, retaining it myself for the time that it belongs to me. And at the same time, I can do so in a way that the adolescent recognizes that I still respect them as a person. That's the most important thing with all of our interactions with our children, is that when they observe us, they're observing that we really do live with the attitude that they are a real person and we have tremendous respect and love for them as a person. Is that helpful, Joy? So I have to say no to my daughter a lot of times, but I very rarely just say no, especially if it's something I can see that she really wants. It's important to her. I will acknowledge that I can see that it is important to her. And then I will share with her my reasoning on why I have to say no. So this happened just recently. There was a game she wanted to play, an online game, with a friend that I don't think is a very good influence on her. And so instead of just saying no and that's it, No, I'm the boss here. That's it. I don't care how much you want to play the game with her. I said no. Instead of dealing with my daughter that way, which, if you think about it, reflects an attitude like you don't. I'm not viewing you as a person. I'm viewing you as kind of like my property that I get to boss around and all that stuff. Instead, what I did was I actually shared with her my the conflict that was going on inside of me. So I actually had a conversation with her, like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about this, and part of me wants to allow that, and then there's this other part of me that I'm conflicted, that, that there's things that I don't think where I don't think that's what would be best for you. So do you understand? I'm kind of conflicted. And she's like, yeah, Dad, I understand that. And I said, well, just give me some time to think about it. And I had some time to think about it. And then when I come back to say no, it wasn't just, I decided no. I said, listen, here's what I've decided. I don't think it's what's best for you. And here's the reasons why. And so we had this conversation about why I didn't think it was what was best for her. And then what I did was I tried to come up with an alternative that's just as good. That's what I mean is that will please her just as much, but it's a healthier alternative in my estimation. So it takes your life kind of has to come to a screeching halt in order for you to really take the time for your children this way. But if you do it, or if you're willing to stop your life and take that time and really not just come to an immediate decision, but really work through a decision while including your child in your thinking, you see how just that reflects an attitude that they are important to you. Like, their feelings really do matter. You understand how important this thing is to them that you even have to say no about. Let me catch up here to the comments. I'm wondering if that could be helpful in your specific situation, Joy. We're at 30 minutes. I'm going to go to supporters only on locals. So again, if you'd like to see the rest of this show and catch up on the rest of this conversation, please join us on locals, become a supporter over there. That helps me. It's the lifeline for me being able to do this. So we're going to switch over to locals here, local supporters only. And in about 5 seconds, it'll just be me and you folks there on locals.